Good evening, everyone. I'm Akshina Lianage, and I warmly welcome you all to the second live session of the project Me to Be, which is organized by the Rotary Club of Faculty of Law of University of Colombo. Me to Be is a project done to create awareness on the LGBTQ community and to promote equality despite people's sexual orientation. This is done in collaboration with Youth Advocacy Network Sri Lanka and Sri Lanka Students for Liberty. As for the live sessions, we have Impulse as our digital support partner who will be broadcasting the session live on Facebook. In today's session, the focus will be on safe sex and contraceptives. And to moderate the session, we have Ms. Sajini Wickramasinghe, who is a proud alumni of our Rotary Club. So over to you, Ms. Sajini.
Thank you, Akshina. So as you all know, today we are with the project Me to We, and today I think it's a second session, and we have a very interesting topic, which is same-sex relationships and contraception. So I think we have Desaree Soysa with us, who is a very active and an experienced advocate on sexual and reproductive health and rights, and also a member of Youth Advocacy Network of Sri Lanka. I think before handing over to Desiree, I think something that's important that I wanted to note was that we might all think, okay, why do we need contraception for same-sex relationships, right? It's basically now Desiree will give you a brief about what it is, but basically I would give you an example why it's important. When I was at a training on a national training on contraception, I had a question, right? Because if a transgender woman is in a relationship with another woman and she still has her male reproductive parts, right? How do we define that relationship? Is it a homosexual? Is it a heterosexual? So the only answer was that only the two that's in the relationship can define what kind of relationship they have. So despite whether it's same sex or it's heterosexual, contraception is important to everyone. And the sexual orientation, sex is a very vast spectrum. You can be in anywhere, within those two extremes. So it's a very vast spectrum. So none of us can really define this is a same-sex relationship, this is not. So disregarding contraception is important to everyone. So with that question, we will start off today's discussion. Desiree, so we will go on with the basics of it. So Desiree, tell us a bit about what's contraception.
First of all, let me thank the Rotary Club of University of Colombo Faculty of Law for inviting me for this session, and also thank you so much for the wonderful introduction, Sajini. I have prepared a small presentation and I'll screen share now that we can begin our discussion. Hope everyone can see the screen. And okay. So basically, contraceptives are various devices or methods that are used to prevent either a pregnancy or a sexually transmitted infection. That is the main purpose of a contraceptive. And when we talk about contraceptives, there are two types of contraceptive methods called the modern contraceptive methods and also the traditional contraceptive methods. And under modern contraceptive methods, we have permanent methods and also temporary methods. And basically these permanent contraceptive methods basically mean that they are surgeries, and once you get these surgeries you cannot reverse it back. And for women we have the LRT surgery, and for men we have the vasectomy. but I won't be talking about a lot on the permanent contraceptive methods today. Instead, I want to use this time to talk mainly on the temporary contraceptive methods. And under temporary contraceptive methods, we have both hormonal methods and non-hormonal methods. And under hormonal methods, we have the oral pill or the OCP, the injection, and the underarm implant. And under non-hormonal methods, we have condoms and the copper IUD. And I'll be talking more on these a little later. I'll start with the traditional methods because these are really not effective methods, but still certain people might use these contraceptive methods. Some of these includes the withdrawal or the pull-out method or the standard day method, the cervical mucus method, and abstinence. Abstinence basically means you are avoiding any form of sexual activity before marriage, so that you can avoid an unintended pregnancy and also being infected from a sexually transmitted disease. Um, I'll talk a little bit on the pull-out or the withdrawal method. This basically means that the penis is being withdrawn from the vagina before a man ejaculates. But there is something called pre-cum, which is a natural lubricant produced by the seminal vesicle and also the prostate gland. It is a natural lubricant produced by those two glands. And usually, when a man ejaculates, sperms can get trapped in the urethra. So, when pre-cum is being secreted from these glands, and while it is traveling through the urethra, these trapped sperms can also leave the body. So, uh, because of that, sorry, because of that, a woman can get pregnant because it only takes one sperm to get a woman pregnant. So due to that reason, the pull-out or the withdrawal method is not really effective. Moving on to the second traditional method, this is called the standard day method, or in other words, this can also be called tracking your menstrual cycle. Usually, for most women, their period cycle ranges up to 28 days. That is, the first day of the cycle is the day that a woman starts bleeding, and the 28th day is the day that she starts bleeding again. So, the day of ending day of the previous cycle, and the bleeding usually continues up to 3 to 7 days. And in the period cycle, there is something called the window period, or the period where there is the highest chance for a woman to get pregnant. And it ranges from the 11th day of your period to the 18th day of your period. And under the standard day contraceptive method, the traditional contraceptive method, what it basically means, you're avoiding any sexual activity or having intercourse during the window period. But this is ineffective because your menstrual cycle can get either delayed, or it can come before the day it is supposed to come, due to various reasons. Maybe because you didn't have proper sleep in that particular month, or because you couldn't get proper nutrients during that month, or stress. Even stress can affect your menstrual cycle greatly. If you are too stressed, for some women, I know that they can get their period prior to the day that they were supposed to get it. Some women get it a few days later, the day that they were supposed to get it. So really you can see that tracking, just by tracking the menstrual cycle, you cannot really avoid a pregnancy. And but thankfully we have more modern contraceptive methods that are developed with the improvement of science and technology. And if you can remember, in the tree diagram I told you that under temporary contraceptive methods there are hormonal methods as well as non-hormonal methods. So I'll start with the hormonal contraceptive methods, and the first one is the oral pill. You might have heard something called Victory because it is the most widely known OCP, and you can get it over the counter as well. All hormonal pills, including the oral pill, has a high dose of progesterone because progesterone does two things. It avoids the releasing of an egg from the ovaries, and also it thickens the cervical mucus. So the cervix is an organ that lies in between the uterus and also the vagina. Uterus is the area where a baby grows. So the cervix is in between the uterus and also the vagina. And in the cervix, there is something called the mucus plug. It is white and it's white in color. And usually, if you can remember, I spoke about the window period. So during the window period, usually this mucus plug is released from the body, leaving more room for a woman to get pregnant. But when you get the hormonal pill, what happens is, um, you when you get the hormonal pill, it rather than removing the mucus plug, it really thickens the mucus plug, uh, avoiding sperms to enter the uterus. And when it comes to the oral contraceptive pill, it is 99.7% effective, and you can start using it between the first day of your period to the fifth day of your period. And when you start taking it, you must take it every single day at the same time. Say today you started taking the OCP at 9 in the morning, so every single day you must take it at 9 in the morning. um okay, next we have the injection, or the, you might have heard it as the Lipo injection or the Lipoprovera contraceptive injection. Like I said earlier, what every hormonal method does is the same thing. It avoids the releasing of an egg from the ovaries so that there will be no fertilization of a sperm and an egg, and it also thickens the cervical mucus. And this method also includes a high dose of progesterone, and you have to take it once in every 3 months. So say you started taking it in January, you have to take it again in February, March, April. Okay. And this method has the highest success rate, or the effective rate, which is 99.9%. And you can start using, or you can get the injection between the first to the seventh day of your period. um, Give me a second, I have to plug my laptop. Sorry, sorry for that technical issue. Okay. let's move on to the other hormonal. So this is the final hormonal contraceptive method. It is called the underarm implant. You might have heard it as Jadel, and as shown in this picture, it has two pills that includes progesterone, and a doctor or a nurse will make a small cut on the underarm area of a woman and implant these two pills, and it is effective up to 5 years, and there is an effective rate of 99.8%, and you can take it between the first to the seventh day of your period. Like I said earlier, what every hormonal pill or hormonal contraceptive method does is the same. It avoids the releasing of an egg from the ovary, and also it thickens the cervical mucus. And now we are moving on to the non-hormonal contraceptive methods. The first one is the IUD, or the intrauterine device. It is shaped like the letter T, and it is made out of plastic. And if you see closely, it has a thin copper wire which is wrapped around the device. What this copper does is it makes the egg and also the sperms ineffective. The copper reacts with the natural chemicals in the sperm cell and also in the egg cell, and makes the sperm and also the egg ineffective. And this IUD is 99.8% effective, and you can get this implanted through a medical professional between the first to the 12th day of your period, and you can have it up to 10 years. So it will work up to 10 years. And finally, I'll be talking about condoms. I'm pretty sure everyone has heard about it. And uh, and usually there are male condoms as well as female condoms. But in Sri Lanka, you can only find male condoms, and you must wear a condom every time you have intercourse. What the condoms does it is that it acts as a barrier, so that the sperms, when a man ejaculates, the sperms will be released through the condom instead of the vagina, so that there will be no pregnancy. Condoms are also very special because special contraceptive method, because it is the only contraceptive method that can prevent both a pregnancy and also being infected from a sexually transmitted infection. And condoms are usually 97% effective. So everything except condoms, everything that we spoke so far except condoms only prevents an unintended pregnancy, but condoms can prevent an unintended pregnancy and also a sexually transmitted infection. I think with that I have answered Sajini's question. Over to you, Sajini.
Thank you, Desaree, for that very elaborative explanation on contraception. I have one question. Shall we discuss a bit about the emergency contraception also? Because I find it, it has been talking the town. I mean, a lot of people, a lot of sexually active individuals use it. Is it good to use it?
Yeah. So I did not include the emergency contraceptive here because usually when it comes to, it is a birth control method, but it is not a family planning method. So basically what the emergency contraceptive pill, or you might have heard it as Postino 1 or Postino 2. Uh, Both these pills have a very high dose of progesterone, and you have to take it if you had an unprotected sexual intercourse. That basically means if you did not use any contraceptive method, or if you used a contraceptive method and you are afraid that it might not work, or if you used a condom and if you experience a situation where the condom broke, in such situation, in such emergency situations, you can use the emergency contraceptive pill, but this pill should not be taken as a regular contraceptive method. It's only there for any emergency situations. Yeah, that's, I think that answered your question, Sajini.
Yes, Desiree, thank you. And yes, now moving on to especially this contraceptive method, especially we talked about condoms, that has a dual purpose. The only method with the dual purpose of both preventing unwanted pregnancy and STIs. So moving on to STIs, and I think that's the most important component when it comes to same-sex relationships, STIs, or we call it STDs also. What are these? And you can maybe give us a few examples of most prominent ones.
You can. Common types of sexually transmitted infections include chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis, the human papilloma virus or the HPV, genital warts, human immune deficiency virus or the HIV. So I have a small video which will basically sum up everything about sexually transmitted infections, basically what sexually transmitted infections are, and how you can get infected from a sexually transmitted infection. And in this video, they also talk about chlamydia and also HIV. Um, and we'll watch it because sexual transmitted infections itself is a very vast topic that can be uh, spoken about for another hour, but due to time constraints, I'm not going to talk about each and everything. But this video basically sums up everything that you have to know about sexually transmitted infections. Um, just let me know whether you can hear when I play.
What is an STI? How do you get one? What are the common types? How do you know that you have one? How can they be treated? Most important of all, how can they be prevented? These are all questions we'll try to answer. As we go through the video, we'll ask you several multiple choice questions. Write down the best letter choice and bring your answers to An STI is a sexually transmitted infection, oftentimes referred to as an STD or a sexually transmitted disease. It is contracted primarily through sexual contact with someone who is infected. There are over 30 sexually transmitted diseases such as chlamydia, gonorrhea, herpes, genital warts, and HIV. 19 million new cases of infection are reported per year. Some can make you sick, some can make it so you'll never be able to have children, and some can kill you. First, let's try to understand how STIs are transmitted. another through some sort of physical course. So we'll put it first on our list of transmission. What makes sex such an efficient mode of transmission is direct contact of bodily fluids, including semen, vaginal fluid, or open cuts. The second common way of spreading STIs is through sharing needles that infected people have used for shooting up drugs, piercings, tattoos, or gang rituals. Imagine a scenario in which the needle tip contacts an infected person's blood. Then that dripping needle tip is shared with an uninfected person, and boom, another person is infected. The third, less obvious STI route is from an infected mother to her newborn during birth or breastfeeding. So let's review what we have learned. First and most common route is through having sex. The second, through sharing needles. And the third, through breastfeeding and birth. A key point here is that one can get a sexually transmitted infection without ever having sex. Another important point about sexually transmitted infections. Both men and women, homosexual and heterosexuals, old and young, rich and poor, can get STIs. So it's not who you are, but what you do that puts you at risk. STIs do not discriminate. STIs are caused either by bacteria or viruses. How do you know that you have an STI? Most STIs are characterized by abnormal secretions, itching, pain, or sores in the mouth or genital areas. When you experience any of these symptoms, see a doctor. Tests can be done for a diagnosis. Infection caused by bacteria can be cured with medications, such as antibiotics. However, viral STIs cannot be cured with antibiotics, but some can be controlled to varying degrees with medication. We'll now focus on three important STIs: chlamydia, herpes, and HIV. Chlamydia is the most common STI within the United States. 73% of these cases are reported by people under 15 to 24. This infection is caused by bacteria, and if caught early on, chlamydia can be treated and cured with antibiotics. Oftentimes, chlamydia is usually mild and therefore hard to identify before it is spread to another individual. However, a simple urine test is often used to determine if chlamydia is present. Many people do not recognize the problem until serious complications arise, such as infertility in women. Chlamydia may also increase the chances of becoming infected with HIV if exposed. Genital herpes is the most common viral sexually transmitted disease. It affects about 45 million Americans, or 1 out of 6 people in the United States. Since it is a viral STD, it cannot be cured by antibiotics, but antiviral medications can help prevent or shorten the outbreaks. Are not a rare symptoms, swollen glands, sores, and skin marks resembling insect bites near the mouth and genital areas. The physical symptoms are called outbreaks. Repeated outbreaks are common, but they typically shorten in length and number over a period of years. Herpes can be diagnosed either through a visual inspection during an outbreak, a tested sample from the sores, or through a blood test. We now turn our attention to HIV, or the human immunodeficiency virus. The life cycle is divided into 3 stages: primary infection, latent or resting phase, and full-blown AIDS. In primary infection, an individual is infected with HIV through unprotected sexual intercourse or by sharing needles. After entering the body's bloodstream, the virus travels to the immune system where it replicates rapidly. A person may display flu-like symptoms for a couple of weeks or months, but then it will go away. Despite the mild symptoms, a newly infected person is quite contagious. In fact, nearly 50% of HIV transmission occurs within this narrow time frame. During the latent resting, the immune cells and stops replicating. The length of the latent phase varies widely and can last from 5 to 15 years. It's only in the last stage of HIV life cycle that HIV comes out of hiding and leads to AIDS, or acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. The virus now destroys certain immune cells responsible for the body's defenses. As a consequence, germs that do not cause significant illnesses in individuals with a normal immune system can now do so in individuals with weak or no immune system. These infections are called opportunistic infections, which often cannot be treated or controlled. In other words, people with AIDS often die of these opportunistic infections. To date, HIV and AIDS have no permanent cure and no vaccine. Yet, with certain prevention and medical strategies, it is possible to delay the onset of full-blown AIDS and postpone death. Early diagnosis and treatment with antiviral medications called cocktail drugs can improve the health outcomes of many patients. Today, an AIDS diagnosis is not an immediate death sentence, and every year more and more people with AIDS survive.
Um, yeah. So basically, just like in the video, there are three basic ways that any sexually transmitted infection can be transmitted from a non-infected person to an infected person. The first and the most obvious is through unprotected sexual intercourse, and secondly from injections that are infected, and thirdly from mother to child. Engaging in a sexual intercourse, it is natural to have any forms of bruises or cuts. It could be in your mouth, it could be in the vagina, it could be in the anus, and the bodily fluids of the infected person has the viruses or the bacteria, and through the cuts and bruises of the uninfected person, these viruses enter the bloodstream of the person who is not infected, and leading that person to be infected with the given sexually transmitted infection. That is what happens in brief. And injections, I hope you understood how injections can lead to a sexually transmitted infection, because the video had illustrated it quite well. And in Sri Lanka, the mother from the transmission of HIV from mother to child was completely eliminated in 2019, if I'm not mistaken. However, the transmission of HIV from mother to child either during birth or during breastfeeding is completely eliminated in Sri Lanka. I think I answered your question, Sajini.
Desiree, thank you. And are there any STIs that can be infected other than by intercourse? For an example, by physical contact, as in the skin contact. Are there any STIs like that?
So when it comes to sexual intercourse, it doesn't only mean penis to vagina intercourse. It could just be oral sex, it could be anal sex, or just by certain so for example, say herpes can get transmitted just through skin to skin contact with the like the saliva of an infected person uh, through oral sex or just by skin to skin contact.
All right. So it's also important to not to stigmatize if an individual has an STI, and I think that is something that we have stigmatized STIs entirely, and it's pretty curable. And even with proper protection, I think even the one individuals with STIs can in a protective health way can engage in sexual activity. So what message, Desiree, that you can give on regarding this stigma that our society especially has regarding STIs?
Um, I think your connection was a little unstable, but it's okay. I heard the important bit. The message that I have to give is basically contraceptives, even though we are focusing the LGBTIQ community during this project, uh, contraceptives are not just for LGBTIQ community. It is for everyone, and anyone can get infected from a sexually transmitted infections. It doesn't matter whether you belong to the LGBTIQ community or whether you do not belong to the LGBTIQ community. So it is important that you use a contraceptive method that suits your lifestyle, and also make sure you reach out to a gynecologist before choosing the contraceptive method. And with this we can really eliminate further spreading of these diseases or infections. And again, once again, it is not just for the LGBTIQ community, it is for everyone. True that LGBTIQ community is at a greater risk due to various behaviors, but it doesn't mean they should be discriminated, or anyone who is having a sexually transmitted infection should be discriminated. These diseases or infections can be controlled with proper precautions, and having the proper knowledge, with the proper knowledge and proper safety precautions, uh, these the infections can be really eliminated in the future. I think that is my message for everyone.
Thank you, Desiree. If anyone else has any questions from the audience, you can post them now. Um, I think we can give like 1 minute to see if there are any questions. If there are no further questions, I think we can end the session for today. Really sorry about my bad connection. It really goes bad when I have something important. Anyways, I think thank you so much, Desiree, for joining us today to enlighten us on contraceptives and its importance when it comes to same-sex relationships and to everyone in general. and me to moderate today's session.
Thank you so much again for the Rotary Club of University of Colombo Faculty of Law for inviting me, and Sajini for wonderfully moderating this session. And if you have any further questions or clarifications, you can always reach out to me. Uh, I am. You can either send your question to Yanesel, or you can message me either on Facebook or Instagram if you have any questions or concerns, or if you want to know a little bit more on any of the contraceptive methods that we spoke, or if you want to know a little bit more on the sexually transmitted infections. And once again, thank you so much.